Hi guys, so on this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. We're talking with Akiko Ogawa. We're doing a little interview style, aren't we, Kikki? So I'll just introduce you first, obviously. So she's a visual artist and founding member of Hyper Groove Collective, and she's leading two projects called Seed Share and Hive. So these are sort of community startups. And she utilizes biomimicry and living systems principles to inform the designs and innovations of her work in order to create sort of more ecological and regenerative societies. That's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be amazing to speak to her because, well, it was Earth Day a couple of days ago. But not just that, we've got loads of planets in Taurus. The ecological systems, that really is Taurus, our resources and how we use our resources. And obviously with Uranus and Taurus at the moment, that's going through a lot of upheaval and change. Obviously Uranus is going to create a lot of change in whatever sign it's in. It's squaring Saturn at the moment as well. There's a bit of resistance from the societies or the government or the systems we have in place. So it's very interesting to see how this plays out and how on a bigger scale with the age of Aquarius, how this is going to sort of change over a really long-term period of time as well. And I think what Kikki is working on is these sort of more community-based online sort of systems are going to be a better way to connect and also more sustainable ways to use resources and things like that is going to be the future. And so talking about this, because we always say how things are going to break down, you know, like how things are being shaken up, obviously with Uranus and Taurus, sort of maybe the more detrimental or the lessons we have to go through with this. But I want to talk to Kikki because it's more innovative and it's more positive, and how we can use this energy to actually do some good in our society and actually how to be more progressive with this energy. So really excited to talk to her. Sorry, I rambled a bit at the beginning.
No, thank you.
So many ways to introduce you, but yeah, talk a bit about the projects that you're working on at the moment. I would love to hear more about them.
Yeah, it's so funny that you said this time it's more about like the breaking down and dissolving of old structures. It's interesting because at the same time it's also like the emergence of like new forms of order that basically would form whenever there is chaos. And yeah, at the moment it seems like there is a lot of chaos going on around the world. But what my sort of project is aimed at is trying to sort of leverage these distributed community projects that are all involved in various like forms of like environmental, social, and economic like resilience, whether that might be giving mutual aid support like in your local area, or like planting more trees, helping to clean litter on near the oceans and near the beach. So it's like the projects I'm working on is basically a way of sort of leveraging these localized initiatives, but in a way that is also sort of like globally connected. This idea of like, this global network as well as this local networks of people and communities, like networking is, I feel like, is the future. And I feel that that really aligns with the idea of like the Uranus and Taurus aspect. I feel like really comes out because I guess Taurus is a very sort of like earthy sign. It's very like, nature based. It's all about the land. It's all about, plants and nature and the natural world. And so my project Seedshare is basically a way, it's basically an application that uses these like structures. So internet based like networking that links and connects like local reforestation or seed saving projects. And the reason why I've decided to go for seed savers is not because I wanted to, but it's because that there's an emergence of like seed sovereignty and seed food sovereignty movements that are sort of coming up and arising from very sort of like land-based community projects, and a lot of them are very aware of the seed system, of how like biodiversity needs to be protected, and is one of the reasons why the ecology is basically degrading, is because we've sort of found ways to control our seed supply, while the big companies that own a lot of the supply will sort of continue to do so by encouraging and incentivizing more profits to be made over actually enabling customers to then save their own seeds, and they do that by making these seeds infertile and unsavable by artificially like selecting the seeds and making them unsavable so that they can keep buying the seeds from companies. So Seedshare is basically kind of helping that movement of seed sovereignty, but it's also tied into this aspect of like connecting the commons and like connecting like environmental causes that are arising at a local level. So yeah, at the moment it's a work in progress, but yeah, I feel like that is a combination between, you know, information technology and how we can connect communities that are focused on these activities and are also like sharing resources and sharing their supply and like, you know, swapping seeds to sort of maintain that biodiversity. But then you also have that element where it's, you know, about connectivity and like, you know, working together to sort of restore land and
no, that's definitely your Aquarius movement, isn't it? Like the era that we're coming into is going into smaller communities, and that it is more sort of supportive, isn't it, in that way? This is a real positive sort of manifestation. I think it's so innovative and so necessary for where we're at right now. Like, I didn't know, I think a lot of people don't know that seeds are patented. These big companies own these seeds. So even when you go out to buy seeds and you want to grow your own food, you want to have that sovereignty, like you say, and be able to have your own resources, Taurus, you can't, because there are these systems in place, Saturn, that are sort of making this difficult. But I think it's to bring our awareness to the fact that we're going to have to overcome this in some way and find another way to go around making things more sustainable. By definition, we can't keep going with things that are unsustainable. We won't have a choice at some stage, will we?
Yeah, and it's also like not just unsustainable, but like sustainable, sorry, but it's also regenerative, making things maintain itself and becoming life supportive, like supportive of life's living systems. And I kind of want to go into that as well. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is informed by the designs of the natural world. So if you look at nature, you see that nature's got these like patterns of self-organizing, or you know, patterns of like behavior, or you know, just its designs, just simply like how it functions and its features that, you know, just works well with everything, with physics. And so the work that I'm doing is also related to biomimicry, so how we mimic biology and how we sort of look towards the natural world to apply these design principles of nature into the designs of like our inventions or our tools, and you know, things that can help, you know, solve the world's problems. So so definitely the principle of creating designs that helps to support life rather than kill, or extractive tendencies to keep extracting resources from the earth. And instead of, you know, you waste these resources, it becomes like a circular and very ecological and non-linear like process of, you know, like using these resources and then conserving and then sort of like renewing them at the end of its life cycle. So biomimicry is basically an emulation of nature's principles, and Seedshare is basically definitely using these principles that is very similar to, you know, how like ant colonies and bee swarms like basically coordinate collectively and work together to conserve resources, and also to work together so that, you know, that's like that hive mentality where we all sort of collectively work together to survive. So that actually relates to my project Hive, but Seedshare is different in a sense where it's focused more on the mycelia networks of like root systems. So in root systems in trees, you have mycelia networks that help to support the trees and maintain the tree's survival. And in case a tree's ill, it basically behaves as like a like a nervous system, so that so other trees can help like send resources and nutrients to other trees.
Other they talk. Yes, that's
Yeah, so it's how they communicate. So
yeah.
siege is basically like using the idea of like how we can, support, like use networks to sort of support and share resources to one another in abundance rather than, being living in scarcity. So that's sort of siege is mimicking that mycelia network of tree systems. But then you also have hive, which is I'll quickly explain what hive is as well. Yeah, Hive is basically like a general purpose platform. So not aimed at seeds, but it's mostly aimed at allowing like communities that wants to do grassroots activities and bottom up activities to self-organize and to like to come together and sort of like have consensus so that everyone's sort of aligned on their group decisions, and then they can sort of take action on what they're working on together collectively. So Hive is basically a platform that enables communities to sort of create their own form of governance so that they can sort of self-govern their own resources and self-govern their own people, so that they don't have to rely on actual like governments. I'm not saying we don't need governments, we do, but like Hive just sort of gives like communities that agency and that independence and that sovereignty to like decide what to do with their own like resources, their own commons. And it's really transparent as well, so it allows like people to see whether there are people doing bad things, people that are doing unethical things. So because of that transparency, it makes people more sort of incentivized to like do good for the world and do good for the public. Yeah, so those are the sort of living systems like principles that I'm following, that hopes to, that sort of mimics nature in a sense. Yeah.
That is beautiful. And you brought up so many important points. Firstly, though, I will say that I'm putting links down in the description of the websites for both of these, Hive and SeedShare as well. And so you can go to them, check them out, and just see what it's all about, because it's just so interesting the way that things are going now. Things are changing very rapidly, especially online. And we can just jump on these opportunities to be able to help each other. Because the other point that you touched on before was that the community mindset of the bees and the animals and the trees and everything in nature it's all supportive in nature, but humans at the moment, at least, or like kind of as society has evolved, we've become more isolated from each other. And I think that's creating a lot of mental illness actually in our society. And the more removed we get from nature, the less connected we are with our very environment. We need to live in harmony with it. And again, it comes back to resources, sustainability, and come back to nature, but not in the way that we ever have done before. I think that's the point of all this Uranian and Aquarius energy, is we're going to have to do it in a new way. And this year as well, we've got Saturn squaring Uranus, I think 3 times throughout the year. It's going to, because it's going in retrograde. The last one will be in December, I think, the square to Uranus. So throughout this whole year, I think we will see a lot of these issues, what we're talking about today, coming up and maybe bringing our attention and awareness more to them. Obviously, Saturn is systems, it's our government, it's the systems and the law and the structures that we have had in place for a long time. They're long-standing structures, Saturn, but squaring this in Uranus, in Taurus, it's like a new innovative way. We need to change how we're doing things. And in Taurus is all about the land, all about our resources and our financial lives as well. Obviously, Taurus is ruled by Venus. So did you want to go into a bit of that? I've got one of our topics here is about the financial change that is happening. It's a big theme of this transit. And with these, I will just say, with these slow transits, with any of the outer planets, with Saturn onwards, a lot of people are sort of talking about them, how they're going to change the world, but it's not going to be instantly. These are slow moving planets. We're not going to really maybe see the true effect of these transits until at least a few years in the future, until we can look back and see, oh, that slowly changed and made us like have to go a different way. So just understanding that as well, nothing's going to happen overnight, and it's all about making those little slow but steady moves towards what we want to actually create for our future. And
yeah, really can say a lot about what's been happening with the financial system. Although I'm not really like a financial expert, but I know that I've been observing the space of like sort of virtual currencies and blockchain and new forms of money that has been sort of emerging over the last like 4 or 5 years. So yeah, obviously blockchain and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is definitely like a big sort of like thing that occurred like over the last decade. But
yeah,
it was only recently where people have been starting to realize that we can literally create value out of anything, and we don't need banks or the financial sort of systems to decide like how much is of what value. So yeah, so definitely like virtual currencies and the emergence of that slowly, I feel like it's becoming more of a norm, and I feel like people are developing more interests in it and are realizing it's such a game changer. So my project Seed, Share and Hive will hopefully sort of implement ways of using virtual currency, but in ways that it is sort of creating value out of the value that comes from seed saving for seed share and for other forms of value or
yeah,
resources,
like natural resources.
yeah, like natural resources,
Yeah.
maybe food or energy, yeah, or like just sort of social currencies like yeah, like sort of attention and reputation.